Welcome to the Restaurants Grow podcast, where you get tips, tricks, and tactics on how to grow your restaurant business. Today on the show, we have Greg Phillips, founder at Arc4. If you've ever wondered, how does search work for restaurants on the internet, or how can I make sure my restaurant's optimized for the best search results on Google? Greg and Arc4 team, they have the answers. They are Yext and local digital exports. By the way, I've not been asked those questions since at least an hour and a half ago. I'm excited to have Greg on the show. We had a really great conversation about how local search works. I know he has a lot of great experience and tactics that he's going to share with you. Greg's a tech career native, and much like me, a former Yexter. We spent a lot of time helping food and service brands grow together and better through local search and digital visibility. Greg launched Arc4 to solve a common challenge to help brands, right, who have platforms in place but need the experienced partners to help make those things work. He's worked with restaurants like P.F. Chang's, Pizza Hut, Smashburger, Jollibee, and more. Fun fact, Greg is in the top 0.1% of all listeners to Bluey on Spotify, with thousands of listens thanks to his assistance and his two young daughters. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for throwing out the Bluey stat. I did see that last week, Bluey actually ranked number one in streaming worldwide. So you think about Friends, The Office, you name it, Bluey is number one. So to be in the 0.1% of listening to them on Spotify, I was very, very proud.
It's amazing. By the way, do you live near a camp store, and did you get to have the Bluey experience?
Yes. Yeah. We took my 3-year-old daughter to it. It was, I would say, for her, an amazing experience, but even for me, I was blown away. It was incredible.
Awesome. I never produced a TikTok, but I did do it. Anyway, more on that later.
Yeah.
Let's talk about local SEO and why it's important. But let's back that up. What is local SEO? I know you know, I know. The people I spoke with this morning had a lot of questions. But for those of the people that don't know, like, what's local SEO?
Yeah, so local SEO in the most straightforward sense is, do you show up when somebody is searching for you locally for what you provide? In this context, if somebody is looking for tacos, they're not looking for tacos nationwide. Chances are they're looking for tacos near them and the best tacos near them. And so local SEO is making sure that your business can rank for when people are looking for you, so you can drive those hungry people directly to your door.
Amen. I think Google uses the word relevance.
Yes.
I always have trouble explaining it at the nerd level. Like, okay, so let's talk about distance, relevance, and prominence. And then people are like, what are you talking about? But
very straightforward. Are you showing up when somebody is hungry? Is your brand, is your restaurant showing up? The easiest way to think about it.
Yeah. And I think maybe a distinction that we might want to explain to people is the difference between like the 10 blue links, the map, and paid. Like, how does that relate here?
Yeah, that's a really good question, especially because it evolves every day now with AI and with all the different things that Google is doing. And so really, when we talk about local SEO, there's two primary areas where you're going to show up. Number one is the map hack, right? That's going to be primary number one. If somebody's looking for best tacos, they're typically going to see the map. They want to make sure that you're showing up. And then the second is what used to be the 10 blue links, but now it's just the first page of a SERP. Which is when somebody's looking for that, does your website show up? Is it your local pages? Is it different areas of your website? But just making sure that you show up in those different areas. Obviously, paid's always going to be there. The more and more it grows, the more it tends to take over those search results. But really what you can do organically is start to grow in that map hack on those links and on that first page of the SERP.
Okay, for a restaurant brand, especially like at a store level, okay, I'm not looking to sign up for your rewards. I'm looking for what I'm going to order for lunch, right? How important is the first page of SERP results, or as I like to call them, the 10 blue links?
It's everything. I mean, when you think about from experience, have you ever scrolled beyond maybe the first couple links? Most people, they'll see a map pack, they'll click in, or they'll see those links, but they're not really going to go too deep. So for you to show up, especially when somebody's hungry and they're looking for some food, for you to show up number one and somebody to click in, that is such an amazing moment, because that is somebody that wants to order right now, that is hungry, and they're not going to search too far. So it's everything. It's at least going to be 90% of that engagement if you're there.
Interesting. I usually don't even scroll past the map. So I just go right to the map.
Yeah, I'm probably one of those weird people where I strictly search on the map. That's usually how I search.
So you're bringing up like the Maps app, and then
Yeah.
Do you happen to know what the stats are of people that search on a Maps app versus a browser, at least for local businesses? Do you?
I don't. I think the majority is people obviously searching on Google, but once you click in, maybe because I'm in this industry and spend so much time on it, I just bypass everything else. I just go straight.
The stat that I've heard and probably repeated for years now is that 67% of searches on Google are for a local business, and 2 out of 3 searches for a local business are for restaurants. So I don't know. So yeah. I assume that's all map.
Yeah. Which makes sense, right? When somebody's looking locally, chances are they want something to eat, they want to purchase something, but obviously you're not going to be going nationwide when you want to order something right now to eat. So it makes sense that those local searches would be.
I've been known to get on an airplane for food, but that's a different conversation. Why might a brand like not rank in search, and what could they do kind of to like fix that or even think about it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a few different reasons why you're not going to show up. You actually nailed some of it, which is distance, relevance, prominence. When somebody's searching for food, what Google and the other search engines are really looking for is, one, they want to make sure whatever they serve up is actually what you serve. So if somebody's looking for tacos or pizza, they want to make sure that what they're showing actually serves those items. The second thing is they want to make sure that you're a quality business. So they're going to look at things like your reviews. They're going to look for some form of authenticity. They want to make sure that your information is correct. So that way, when they display it, they're not sending you to a closed location or sending you to something that maybe it has terrible service. And then the other piece is just prominence, right? So it's just showing up locally near them. I would say the biggest mistake that we typically see with a lot of our restaurant brands is they may focus on specific areas of their digital presence. They may have a really nice looking website. They have a good social channel. But when it comes to local, they tend to ignore it. It's almost like an afterthought, right? So it's, maybe their listings and their information locally is incorrect or outdated. Their local pages and their local presence that tells you about that actual restaurant near them just doesn't have the information that that the end user is looking for. And so typically when you're not showing up, it's because you're just not doing the basics of having that information and displaying it in a way that a consumer can actually find you.
I'm assuming this is all restaurants. Doesn't matter if I'm a mom and pop or if I'm McDonald's. Like it's kind of the same for everybody, right?
Yeah. And so I'd say it's different problems the larger you get. Obviously, if somebody's looking for McDonald's, chances are they're going to find a McDonald's. But when somebody's looking for a burger near them, that's an open playing field, right? And chances are if somebody's looking for the best burger near them, as you know very well, it's probably not going to be McDonald's. It's going to be that mom and pop shop down the street that does something custom, that does the nice smash burger, whatever it may be. And so you have that ability to compete against these big brands when you do it right and you actually tell people exactly about your brand, what menu items you offer. You showcase your reviews, you showcase those local prominence, because when somebody's searching near them, it's an even playing field. It's all about location and showing the right
this morning I searched for oldest McDonald's in New Jersey, but that's a different story also. My kid wants to go to McDonald's all the time, and I'm just trying to vary it up.
Yeah.
What would cause a brand to like not show up in that search? Like what would, like, I think I'm doing the right things, but like maybe I'm not. Like what would keep me from being there?
Yeah, I would say the biggest pieces are either bad information or missing information. What we typically see when we work with brands is it's not necessarily bad information. Maybe they have some outdated language or maybe some bad store hours, but typically what it is just not enough information. You'd be surprised how many people just have their name, address, and phone number out there, and that's it. But they don't say what menu items they offer. They don't talk about the rewards. They don't talk about the different specialties that they have. They don't showcase reviews. They don't showcase the different things that make them unique about the brand. And that's typically where we see you lose, because what Google is looking for and what you as consumers ultimately looking for is that type of information. You want to know what the best burger is. You want to know what the menu item is. You want to know what you have to offer. And typically what we see brands is just not having enough of that information locally.
Okay. I have a tendency, and I think most people probably even more so than I, when we talk about search or internet search, we literally just like our brain fires up Google as an image, right?
Yeah.
Is Google the only game in town? Are there other games? Like how much do we care about the rest of the internet? Like how does that all play into this?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good question. A couple of years ago, I'd say, Google is typically 90% of your search traffic. It's changing and it's changing rapidly. Obviously, with the increases of AI, we're starting to see that the different platforms are changing. There's a few different pieces there. I think when I say AI, most people think, okay, ChatGPT, Google, and that's it, right? What we typically see is Google, Bing, these other search engines, they're incorporating AI into their searches already. So you're technically using AI, even if you don't want to, because they're serving up those different areas. And then you have the third parties, right? Beyond Yelp, it's the delivery platforms, it's all these different types of platforms that are also ranking locally. So all those matter. I will say Google still matters. It's very, very important. It's still going to be the main traffic driver. And the good news is when you want to optimize for Google and start to optimize for those different areas, most of the foundational things stay the same. It's not like you have to have two wildly drastic different strategies for ChatGPT compared to Google. They're all foundationally very similar. So you can start to focus on those different areas with very similar concepts without drastically having to change much. But to answer your question direct, yeah, it's changing. It's rapidly evolving. I think over the next year or two, you're going to consistently see that people move away from Google to these other platforms. But the good news is the foundational elements of it all kind of stays the same.
Do you see a world where people are asking ChatGPT, what should I get for lunch?
Absolutely. I mean, it's happening today. That's like for me personally, when I search, maybe not when it's something for lunch, but if it's a bigger event, maybe I want to go out for a nice dinner with my wife. I'm asking ChatGPT because it's giving me recommendations. It's not necessarily just giving me, a bunch of links. It's actually saying, hey, here's the restaurants that you may want to book. That's great for a date night. Here's why. So I actually trust it because it's more advice driven. So I think it's already happening today. And the more comfortable people get with these search engines and these AI bots, like it's going to continue that way because they look at it as almost a recommendation engine. It's a friend, right? So it's definitely.
I just came back from a road trip and I've never done this until now, but my co-pilot was ChatGPT. So I'd be in ChatGPT, be like, okay, I'm driving from Casey, Illinois to Anderson, Indiana after 5 o'clock today. You know what I like to eat? What would be 3 great recommendations? And like, I feel like I could have never asked that question to Google, right? Like I could have asked it, but I wouldn't have gotten the type of answers I got from ChatGPT.
Yeah. I mean, a year or so ago, you probably would have got a couple blog posts that were listicles of here's the 10 best restaurants in these areas. And now what you get is direct answers. But the biggest thing that you just said was you said, what I like to eat, right? That's the craziest part is it's understanding, what your preferences are, what you're interested in, and it can make those tailored recommendations, which to me is just incredible.
So I was going to go a different route, but we're going to stick in this. What can a brand do to ensure they're optimized for AI?
That's a good question. So I'll take a step back to kind of flip it a little bit. So I think most people's initial recommendation would be very detailed or pointed strategies that are specific to AI, right? Maybe you do a bunch of structured FAQs or you do these other pieces. I would say what you need to do initially is make sure your house is in order and look at the foundation. So the same things that will help you rank on Google or other search engines are also going to help you rank in AI because they're all sort of working very similar. So really what that is make sure your information is correct, make sure your local presence is built out, make sure you have a good reputation, that you have a good solid foundation of reviews. Make sure that the information that you want to show up for is exposed on your website, on your listings, on your other digital properties. You need to make sure that your foundation is correct because no matter where you search, if that information is bad or if you have a bad reputation or if you're just not exposing that information, you're not going to show up no matter what because how are they going to know? From there, there's a bunch of tactics and strategies that you can definitely do to start to rank. Specific for AI search, there's a few different techniques, but really, if you're not doing the foundational pieces, it doesn't really matter because you need to make sure that your website's structured, that the information's in order, that you're actually being seen before you start to kind of focus on the next frontier of AI and all these different pieces. You need to get that house in order.
I want to make sure I understand. So if I'm doing listings management, meaning my name, hours of operation, phone number, my menu, it's on my listings, check, right? If I'm getting review velocity and I'm replying to reviews and my customers are saying hopefully deep, rich things about my experience menu, check. right? And then as long as I have
Mhm.
some level of optimization on my website, check, right?
Yeah, foundationally, those are some of the big things. When you think about listings, as I'm sure you know, I think a lot of people think of those as set it and forget it, right? It's like, hey, I got my information out there, I never have to touch it again. Those are living and breathing things. As you mentioned, people are leaving reviews, they're asking questions. It's ability for you to post images, photos, to interact with people locally. So that's one big mistake I see people make is they just don't pay attention to that. And then the second piece is on those local pages. So on your store page, on your restaurant page, actually having the right information. Do you have menu items out there? Do you have big, order now or book a reservation links on those pages? Do you have structured information that tells you the types of food you provide? What makes your business unique? All those different pieces are really going to help you rank. And those we just look at as pure foundational. And what I see is oftentimes businesses aren't necessarily focusing on that.
I tell restaurants, if you want to come up for a best hot wing search near me, how does Google know you have hot wings if you don't add your menu to it? Like, or how can you expect
Exactly.
it?
Exactly. And how do they know, is it at that location, right? Because locations may vary too. And then how do they know that you're an active business that's, interacting with their customers and getting all those different pieces? All those are
I've
very
heard a
important.
rumor. I'd love you to either correct it or dispel it or double click it. Um, Part of earning trust as being the right answer in search includes managing your listings regularly. So as opposed to setting it and forget it, if I essentially like log in once a month, that sends a signal of air quotes trust to the listings provider that it's being managed by somebody in the business. Is that true? Is that not true? Did I get that wrong?
No, that's absolutely true. So Google and the other search engines, they look at those signals as trust, right? So are you engaging? Are you actively managing it? Are those different store hours up to date? A few years ago, Google was actually doing kind of creepy, these like automated voice calls where they were calling all the businesses and is your information correct? All these different pieces. But the reason why they're doing that is they want to make sure that they're actively being managed and actively up to date. Because that's also a trust signal, right? If you look at two businesses and one hasn't touched their information in 2 months and one's active, you're going to trust that that one's probably open and has the most relevant
Yeah, I
information.
look at it very similar. Like a friend of mine was like, "Oh, hey, do you know this 37 unit brand I'm helping out?" I was like, "No, go check them out." And I ended up on their social media, and they haven't updated Instagram since June 2nd. I'm starting to question as a guest, like, are they open? Like, what's going on here? Like, you have 37 stores. Like, why? Like, same thing. If Google's like, you haven't logged in here in like 90 days, like, does this matter to you? Like, is this information correct? Like, it's a sim. I think very similar energy.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, really, when you think about it, they can only go off of the information they have. So if one of the ranking things is like, are you in there? Are you active? That's going to boost you up just because somebody else may not be. Now, you don't have to spend every single day in there and, it's not going to be your life. But at the same time, definitely showing some engagement, making sure your information's correct, posting regular updates, obviously engaging with things like reviews and Q&A on those listings. Those matter. And it's just kind of a basic fundamental signal, right? It all
Okay,
makes
so
sense.
I think most restaurants, probably most local businesses, the black and white information that's in your listings doesn't really change. Your address doesn't change. Your phone number doesn't change. You might have a holiday hour, but for the most part, like, kind of is what it is, right? Um,
Mhm.
if I need to log into my listings once a month to obtain the trust signal, and there's nothing really to update, is replying to a review good enough? Like, is that send the trust signal, or do I need to do something else?
There's multiple things you can do. Review response and replying to your reviews is, what I consider very bare minimum. Obviously, if people are taking the time to leave a review, for you to come back and respond to them is not only just showing that you're a live business, but also just common courtesy and common sense to engage with your guests. Now, beyond that, there's other things that you can ultimately do. One is just making sure your information is correct, right? There's always holiday hours, special hours, things like that. So just signaling that, hey, this is up to date, and if somebody comes, they can trust that that information is correct. The other piece, and people often forget about this, but Google does have a posting feature, right? That's a secondary channel where you can push out promotions, you can push out specials. They have Q&A features, not heavily used, but people do ask questions about your business. There's lots of different pieces that you can do. But at a bare minimum, just showing activity, making sure that it's correct is definitely something that will help. Oftentimes you'll see if you're interacting with Google and you're looking at a listing, it will say, hey, this information was last updated by the owner on XYZ date, right? So it will actually flag that to end users.
Makes sense. Yeah, I try to put a lot of post updates. I have a question. I actually don't even know the answer to this, so I'm hoping you do. Does YouTube affect local search? Does that have any effect on local search at all?
I mean, I'm sure it has some. I've never looked into it. We work with a lot of service-based businesses outside of the restaurant industry. They tend to do very well because it's very detailed. If you're doing remediation or some type of service, that makes sense. We'd have to look into it. I'm sure there's some signals, especially because Google owns YouTube, right? They're going to give some prominence there. I haven't really seen that as a core strategy. Typically, when we see strategies in videos, it's something like TikTok where somebody is focusing on a marketing strategy and it's more social. I've never really seen, YouTube come into play, but I think that'd be fun.
I have somebody at the hamburger shop. I have somebody who helps us with TikTok. I have her take every single post she does on TikTok and add it to our YouTube page.
Have you started to see some results?
That's why I asked you, because I just realized we do that and I don't have the answer. But I'm like, we created the content. We might as well broadcast it as much as possible. You know what I mean?
I mean, there's also certain search types where it makes sense to show a video. Like you think about what are the 10 best burger spots in this area. Hey, if you have a video on why it's the best burger spot, it might start to showcase, and it would actually make sense from a search.
You see this new thing they released that Instagram is now going to be optimized for Google search. I mean, that's like 2 days old, but any thoughts on that as it relates to local search?
I was just reading about this morning. I think it's going to be interesting. What we've seen with a lot of these social platforms is they dip their toes in local, but they never really fully master it. They never really fully invest. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But again, with user behavior, people are still using Instagram as a search mechanism. They are looking for those different pieces. And if that can be something that can build your business where you could go viral locally or you could start to promote your brand, it would make sense for them to tie it back to the business. We've always looked at that as an endpoint where you need to have correct information, similar to Facebook, right? You have your local information, you make sure it's updated there, but to see it kind of play in the space, I think will be interesting. My only worry is, sometimes you see these brands dip their toes in and get back out. We've seen a few different of those social platforms do it over the years, but at the same time, I mean, I can see why that would make sense, especially when you and I were just talking about TikTok. Who are they competing against? Instagram. If they're both playing in that space, it makes sense for them to invest.
The world of search is a complicated world, but it's not hard to master, right? There's like you said, there's a few foundational things. All right, I'm gonna ask an elephant in the room question. Does Yelp matter? How much?
Yes.
Why?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In the food space, it absolutely does, simply because people still look at that as a resource and a source of truth. I would say definitely over the years it has shifted. Google's gone very heavily into their review strategies. So it's definitely a signal source. But that said, there's still lots of visitors going in and looking. Some of it's just past user behavior where there's some people where I go on a map and I look for my different recommendations. Somebody still goes into Yelp and looks for it. So I definitely think it's important. How prominent that is over the next couple of years, we'll see, but it's definitely still a strong signal.
Heard. That is the question I got asked this morning. Like, does Yelp matter? And I was like, if there's 3 people on Yelp, we would like 3 more people to dine in the restaurant. Yes, those 3 people.
But it's not only that, it's 3 people that are looking to eat right now. Like they're looking for what you have to offer. So why would you not? Because it's highly qualified traffic.
Okay, let's talk about the brass tacks of execution. So we're talking listings management, reputation management, website, a bunch of stuff. For the stuff that's like tied to the location, corporate should manage websites that I'm bringing up. For the listings and reputation, whose responsibility do you think that should be? Is that like corporates? Is that GM? Is it the franchisee? Is it a marketing department, an agency? Like, who should own that? What do you suggest?
Yeah, it depends on the brands and how big the brands are. But what we typically recommend and see is digital marketing or corporate is the main owner of that. They're going to make some of those bigger decisions, like do you use a list management provider? What does like the core website portions look like? It's all digital marketing. Typically, an agency like us will come in and support that and make those recommendations. But really, where we see the best brands do it well is when it's a healthy blend, right? When corporate owns everything and they're making those decisions at the local level for the franchisees or the operators, that's never a good situation because they may not know what's going on. So typically, what we see is core branding, that core information should be coming from corporate. That should be controlled there. You should make sure you have your single brand identity. But when it comes to things like local review responses, when it comes to engaging at the local level, even local promotions, that can definitely be handled by the operator or by somebody in the field. It's typically a healthy blend. But again, it depends on the business model. Typically, what we see is digital marketing will own that. They'll work with somebody like us. We'll help them build out a strategy and then support both sides of the house. So making sure that you can do it at scale, but also working with the field to know what's going on. I mean, I'm sure you've probably seen it before, but somebody leaves a bad review and then some scripted AI bot or whatever it may be from corporate comes in and just says, "Thank you for your response." And that's it, right? Like, people don't like that, right? So if an end GM or somebody at the local level can respond to that because they actually know what's going on, it's an authentic. People are going to engage that way, and what you should really do is focus on having the tools that allow people to do that without taking them off the line.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about what you do in just a second, but before we get there, when is the right time for multi-unit brand to think we should probably get some outside help with this? Like, what's the signal?
Typically, what we recommend is once you're around that 10 location mark, once you're starting to hit that scale, that's really where you should start to focus. If you're a few locations, definitely you should invest there. But I would say the investment when you start to scale and you're focused on that scale is really where you should hit. The earlier, the better, right? Because the earlier you invest, the faster you're going to have that success and the less growing pains you're going to have. You don't have to like shift a bunch of platforms or strategies or whatever it may be. You can just start from day one. Typically when it's 10 or more, that's when we start to see you have a data problem on your hands, right? You have all this information that starts to spread out in all these different locations. To manage that starts to become a bit of a headache. And that's also when you're hitting that point where you know you're going to consistently grow beyond those units. That's typically where we see it.
I would agree. I think that local search is important regardless of how many locations. The importance never changes. It's always important. One store, 100 stores, it's important. However, the complications of optimizing it get exponentially more difficult the more stores you have.
Exactly. At some point, it goes from a local marketing strategy to a data management problem mixed with local marketing, mixed with your brand and all these different pieces. And if you can't control that at scale, you can have a big mess on your hands.
Heard and experienced. Tell us a little bit more about Arc4 and what you guys do.
Yeah, so Arc4 is a digital agency that specializes in enterprise and multi-location brands. So much of what we've talked about today, work with a lot of restaurants, and really what we do is build, manage, and service all things local SEO. So that's everything from websites to local store pages to managing your listings presence and your review strategy. We offer an end-to-end suite of solutions that help both the corporate and the franchisees manage their business local. Really, our end goal is to make sure that when people are looking for for what you offer, you show up instead of your competition. And so we partner with you to build out those experiences and to help manage those experiences locally. As you mentioned, what we've really seen is the larger you get, the more complicated it gets, and oftentimes the more neglected it gets. But when you really focus on local SEO and what matters, you can really start to drive a significant amount of increased traffic for people that are looking for whatever you're offering to eat.
Well, and are you guys like strategists or are you like a done for you solution?
It's a mixture, right? So we do everything from design, development, kind of building out the strategy, all the way down to the execution, even full service, hands-on, day-to-day management of your local presence. Really, where we specialize is in businesses that are at scale. We'll tend to work with the corporate and then offer franchise solutions as well to help them manage those local presence. And then the main difference for us is, no matter where you're at as a business, no matter what platforms you have, what systems you have, what we really recognized is everybody probably has a series of different softwares and solutions kind of bundled together. And instead of coming in and having you re-platform or do all these expensive big things, We want to meet you where you're at. We want to kind of grab some of that low-hanging fruit and make sure you're doing the basics, and then build up over time to do the, kind of the bigger replatforms, whatever it may be as you scale out. But really what we found is, you're spending so much money on all these different pieces of software, all these different strategies locally. And if you're not actually executing and leveraging those platforms right, you're not really getting the most out of your investment. So we try to meet you where you're at and then help you make.
I find that when I'm helping restaurants with this, and I don't do the extent that you guys do, I'm more of a strategy person. When I get under the hood, there's a whole lot of you didn't know what you didn't know. Like it's the problem is bigger or deeper than even the brand thought it might be. And anyway, Greg, we're kind of at the end of our conversation here. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, so there's two ways. One, you can just go to arc4.com and hit contact us, and we'll reach out to you. If not, I'm on LinkedIn. Just message me directly. Pretty active there. But yeah, we're always ready to have those conversations and see how we can help out.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Please jam that subscribe button on YouTube.